Rev up your engines!
I asked 250SS, when will used car prices go down? From what I've seen, they're actually starting to come down. I have people bring me cars now, and the prices are lower than they were 2 or 3 months ago. It looks like they're starting to change a little bit. The real kicker will be when the recession comes, they'll drop like a stone because people will be getting cars. They can't afford the monthly payments, and there's going to be a flood of used cars on the market. So if you can wait, still wait. In a little while, when things start to heat up and people stop paying their payments and the market is flooded with these return cars that were either leased or the people bought them and can't pay the payment, they're turning them in. Once the market's flooded, the price goes down. Sock'em79 says, Scotty, happy to catch the stream. What are your thoughts on the new Mazda 3s? I like them because a few years back, Toyota invested even more in Mazda. I believe they own 20-something% of the company. They're building Toyotas and Mazdas on the same assembly line in a factory, I believe it's in Alabama. They've got Toyota technology now, a lot more than they used to. Used to be Mazdas had horrible automatic transmissions. No, now they've got much better transmissions. Their engines used to blow head gaskets. They really don't anymore if you take care of them. The deal they got going with Toyota really has helped Mazda out. They're much better than they used to be. Billy says, how can I diagnose a misfire on a car without a scan tool? Well, let me tell you something. Get a scan tool. You can go out and buy a $29 scan tool. You plug it in. Let's say it says misfire cylinder number 2. Then you take the ignition coil on number 2, put it on number 4, and put 4 on number 2. Erase the code, start it up. If it now says misfire cylinder number 4, you know it's the ignition coil. You gotta have a scan tool to make it fast. Like I say, you can get one that does basic data like that for $29. I show one of my videos. It's an ANCEL, ANCEL. It's like $29. Works perfectly fine for basic stuff like that. Buy it. It's worth it. Could save you a ton of money. Mechanics charge $150 to $200 an hour labor at the average shop today. This tool costs you $29. Buy it. It's worth its weight in gold. Quentin Gaiman says, Scotty, what can you do about little rust patches? Well, realize one thing. As Neil Young sang, rust never sleeps. Once you got a hole, it's rusted out. What you have to do, if you want to fix it correctly, is cut out the rusted area, weld in steel, then sand it down, bondo it, and paint it, right? If you just want it to look good for a short period of time, you can use fiberglass, you can scratch it down, put fiberglass, and then paint over that. But it will continue to rust and eventually fall apart. The only way you can get rid of it's like cancer. You got to cut it out, right? But if you want to cover it up and paint it, go ahead, and then, a year or so later, it'll come out again. You have to do it all over again. Patch it with bondo, paint it, and sell it. A lot of people do that. That's why I tell people, when you're buying a used car, bring a magnet. Then you can put a magnet all over. You get to a part where the magnet falls off, that's plastic. Bondo, don't buy the car because, it's all rusted underneath. Deep Patel says, why won't my 2012 Honda Civic accelerate? Many reasons you can lose acceleration. Always start basic and work your way up. Don't start complex. Sounds simple. Check the spark plugs. Maybe they're worn out. Check the air filter. Maybe it's clogged up. Check the fuel filter. Replace it. Maybe it's clogged up. That normally fixes it. If not, it could be a clogged catalytic converter that we mechanics can check with a pressure gauge, a weak fuel pump, which we will also check with a pressure gauge. Could even be computer electronic. But start out with a simple thing. Spark plugs, filters. A lot of times that's all it is. I often fix many cars that way. Don't think it's always the worst case scenario. Always start with the simple things first. Devin K said, Scotty, what do you think of a 216 Nissan Micra? All right. They're tiny little cars, right? Tiny, tiny little cars. Now, I rented one once. My wife hated it. She thought it was one of the worst cars she was ever in. But Asia, they drive a lot of micro cars, and they like them. I mean, they ride kind of bumpy, but they get good gas mileage, and they're okay. They'll last a while. Of course, they're not powerful. They're tiny little engines. But if you want a tiny little car, they're not horrible cars, But, if I was going to get a tiny car, I'd get a Toyota or a Honda tiny car. I wouldn't get a Nissan tiny car because they're not nearly as well made as the Toyotas and the Hondas. Lionel Rivera says, Scotty, what's your opinion on Mitsubishi recalling Outlander Sports to reprogram CVT for revving at high speeds and destroying engines? For years, if you ever watch my advice, I've told people, do not buy Mitsubishi Outlanders. They look cool, they're big, they're fun to drive, but they fall apart when they age. They always have. I don't care if you're talking about one from decades ago or a modern one. When they reprogram them to fix them, that's just a Band-Aid. They're too cheap to actually fix them correctly. If they did, it would cost them a fortune. Imagine, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 years of cars. they're going to have to rebuild all the trannies. It would cost them a fortune. So they're thinking, oh, we're going to reprogram. I've seen that so often. Chrysler's done it for years. Oh, we have transmission problems. Bring it in. We'll reprogram. Well, I've had it done to my customers' cars. I'll reprogram, bring them back to me. They work just as bad as they did before, maybe a little bit better, but not much. I mean, if it's recalled, you get it for free, go right ahead. But my advice, since the market is still relatively high, sell the stupid thing and get a Toyota or a Honda, because they aren't very well made. Mitsubishi is not a big car company. It's a huge multinational corporation. Mitsubishi made the Mitsubishi Zeros that attacked Pearl Harbor. You know, they've been around a long time. Cars is small potatoes to them. They don't care that much about cars. Consequently, they don't make such great cars either. I would never, ever buy one. Nathaniel Luss said, Scotty, are the Dodge Pentastar 3.6-liter V6 engines any good? What are your thoughts? The 2019 Caravan my wife and I bought. It's only 3 years old. The newer ones are better than the earlier ones. The earlier ones were plagued like mad with problems. They seem to be making them better to some extent. That's a 2019. That baby was built when it was Fiat Chrysler, and their quality was going down the toilet. I would not own one. I would not own a Caravan either. I mean, the old joke goes, how come you can carry 8 people in a Dodge Caravan? It's because 7 of them can push while the 8th one drives it, and you can get to the nearest garage and get it fixed. I would not buy one, but you got to take care of it and pray that your engine lasts better than the earlier generation Pentastars that did have problems. Change your oil every 5,000 miles with full synthetic oil. Heed my warning and do that religiously. Carlos Eduardo A says, are Subaru Foresters any good? I'm not a gigantic Subaru fan, but I have customers with Subaru Foresters. They absolutely love them. They're one of the safest cars out there. A guy, when I was in Rhode Island, a fireman from New York came, and he bought a brand new Forester because he saw it was rated so high on safety, and he was an EMT fireman. He dealt with car wrecks and people being killed all the time. He wanted a safe car for him and his wife. So that's what he got, and he loves it. They're not bad vehicles, and they can last quite some time. If you want an all-wheel drive vehicle like that, it's a pretty good choice, really. Kevin Durrett said, what do you think of the rumored Mazda Wankel hybrid? You know, I think it's just a myth. They've been talking about that for ages. Here's the problem with Wankel engines. Wankel engines pollute. They're rotary engines. The rotors spin. They're triangular rotors. At each corner of the apex, they're seals. They always go bad, and they pollute. When they first made them, and they thought, oh, great, Mazda had a Mazda Cosmos, right? Little engine can run on anything they showed in their ads. They could run on perfume. Oh, they could run on any type of fuel. The only problem was, no matter what kind of fuel you put in them, they were tremendous gas hogs, and they burnt fuel like mad. What's the point of having a little engine that's got a lot of power that's a gas hog? Plus, they pollute more. So, I don't think they'll ever make it big, especially the United States. I don't think they'll ever be able to meet the EPA pollution laws. Tom Baldwin said, I saw 76 Porsche 911 yesterday. The guy said it's a 6-cylinder boxer. Sounded nice. Yeah, they sound nice. Let your neighbor have one. You can listen to the nice sound. You don't have to fix it yourself. Those things are endless money pits as they age with high mileage. They're air-cooled performance engines. You sit around idling, not enough air, the engines overheat and burn themselves out early. You know, they're fun sports cars to drive around in, but I mean, that's just antique technology, and they're interesting, you know, they're fun to drive. It's like guys, they like antique motorcycles. Okay, yeah, they look cool and they sound cool, but they're always breaking down. Give me a modern motorcycle that doesn't break down, and I'll be a happy camper. I don't want something that's breaking all the time. I want something that sounds cool, goes fast, and isn't going to break down. I don't want something that's going to break down all the time, and those Porsches are notorious for breaking down as they age, and the parts cost a fortune too. But they do sound good. Honda and LG Chem are going to build a huge electric battery factory in the United States for cars, of course. They said they're going to spend $4.4 billion. And from what the rumors are, it's going to be made in Ohio, which only makes sense. They got a huge Honda factory and a test track. Of course, the reason they're doing it here is because of that tax credit. If the batteries are made in the United States, then they get this big tax credit out of the cars. So they'll sell more electric cars. So in this case, changing the law actually is helping what's going on in this country. They said you got to have a certain percentage, I think it's 80% of the batteries have to be made in the United States instead of overseas. So now they're making factories here. Well, there's a law that actually makes sense. I'm not a fan of electric vehicles, but hey, if it's going to give people jobs in this country, what the heck? Who cares? They said they're going to start building a factory early 2022 to have the batteries ready by 2025. They're going to be mass producing them for the electric cars. And interestingly enough, there's also a deal between the same company, LG Chem, and General Motors, making a factory making batteries also in Ohio. But they said they're going to have a $2.3 billion plant. Who knows what's going to happen? Is the battery technology good enough? They keep saying they're going to make it better and better. I just read an article the other day that a Chinese company claims they're going to have a minivan that can go 600 miles next year. They'll have a battery. It can go 600 miles. That'd be a game changer for people if they can really go that far. They haven't made them yet. When they do, will they last? Will they hold up? Who knows? I personally don't want to be a guinea pig, but hey, if they're going to start making the stuff in the United States, what the heck? Unfortunately, of course, they're going to also have to start building a whole bunch of more power plants to generate the electricity, and, you know, nobody's talking about that except me and a few other people. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.